to IEP Radio, a show dedicated to the education of all things indoor environmental quality related. And now here's your host, Michael Schrantz.
Welcome to IEP Radio. This is episode 21. Today we're going to be talking with the Air Conditioning Contractors of America, or ACCA, and we'll be speaking with Matt Akins, who is the manager of the HVACR Education Department. The reason for this podcast is I really wanted to share with folks a resource as it pertains to wanting to have their HVAC systems inspected, cleaned, and cover high-level concerns that we run into as it pertains to when to clean, when to replace, what are the guidelines, what are your expectations as an end user, because ductwork is a touchy thing, and I don't think anybody has a black and white answers, but we have ways to guide us through. And I think ACCA really sets the standard and provides resources for you, including ways to even find local professionals in your area that can help ensure or increase the confidence that your job's going to be done the right way. Matt's going to help me get that done today. I want to talk to you a little bit about Matt. His responsibilities as the manager of the education department is developing technical educational materials, working with ACCA certified educators on outreach and scheduling, and providing technical support to members. Matt brings 16 years of HVAC experience to ACCA. He spent the last 5 years as a technical trainer teaching HVAC curriculum to hundreds of students across the country. He managed all aspects of the training process, which consisted of designing classes for duct design, refrigeration, and HVAC system diagnostics. He was also responsible for editing existing classes and making them current with current codes and laws. This guy is packed with a wealth of information. He's a great guy, and I look forward to speaking with him. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
We appreciate the opportunity. I wanted to bring the audience kind of into the fold of today's conversation just for a moment. We talk a lot about the air conditioning system or the HVAC system. And when it comes to indoor air quality, big picture, there's a lot of moving parts. We get into duct cleaning of the system components, the timing, the methods, and even in talking with you a bit offline before we went live here, there's even a real bigger issue too about appreciating the background of the person stepping foot in your home to do the work or your building. In other words, that the company that's coming up is meeting some minimum qualifications for industry standards so that you know what you're getting. Because if you don't have a solid foundation, if you don't have a company that really, has that education and knowledge, none of the other stuff really matters. It kind of just falls apart. So I was hoping we'd start today by having you kind of give our audience high-level background about ACCA, a little bit about its history, and kind of maybe where, its vision and main role today is.
Sure. That's no problem at all. So ACCA is the Air Conditioning Contractors of America. We're a large trade organization that represents a lot of members across the United States. In fact, we're in all 50 states. And we're an organization that helps write standards, for example, on how to size equipment, doing a load calculation, how to properly size ducts, and how to properly size equipment. I know a lot of contractors out there, when they're going to sell someone a piece of equipment, they look at the model and serial number and they go, oh, that's a 2-ton, let's put a 2-ton back in. And that's not always right. So we write the standards on the best way to size the equipment. We also write the standards for best practices on how to do maintenance, for example, to get everybody on the same page, and the practices and standards for, duct cleaning, which we reference other organizations to take a deeper dive in that. But we just write everything to give the client the best service that they deserve. Instead of this tribal learning rule of thumb, we actually write the science and the best methods behind it to deliver a quality product.
Absolutely. And I know I'm salivating at the mouth to talk a little bit about the duct cleaning system cleaning, but you reminded me before we got on today about bigger picture kind of considerations. Imagine the concern of our audience might be multiple, but they're ultimately wanting to have their air conditioning system inspected. Could you kind of turn that chapter and say, what is it that ACCA has available for those companies and things that the audience can keep in mind as a way to vet or verify these companies are doing best practices, that sort of thing?
Sure. So number one, we have our quality contractors, people that are certified through ACCA that can deliver that service, whether it's going to be sizing up equipment or dealing with Energy Star homes. So we have our quality assured contractor, and you can go to our website and type in your zip code and do a search within so many miles and find a contractor in your area that is following our practices. The other thing is, when customers have people into their home, it's always good for the technician to sit down with the homeowner and ask them some questions about their system, whether it's a first-time customer or a long repeated customer. I always tell people it's like going to the doctor. When you go to the doctor, no matter how many times you go, how many visits, they do the same thing in the beginning. They're checking your blood pressure, they're checking all your vitals. And it's very important for a technician to sit down with the consumer and ask them some questions. For example, are there any rooms that are hard to heat or cool? Do odors linger? Is the equipment loud? Just stuff like that, because most homeowners will either not tell them because they don't know, or they're afraid they're going to find something. But in the end, the technician really needs to know so he can prescribe the best remedy to deliver, a comfortable house with the equipment.
Right. Exactly. So minimum amount of it, you need to ask the right questions. When a homeowner or building owner or occupant, certainly they can use the searching tool to kind of hedge their bets that they're finding somebody who's got the right background that meets your guys' specifications. Is there any resources that they have that they can review themselves to get an idea of what they should be seeing by this inspector that ACCA has?
Yeah, you can go to our website, www.acca.org. We also have free resources online for the public to download. For example, our quality maintenance program. It's a standard that we've written on the best practices on how to do a proper maintenance when you're in someone's house. And not only is it for the homeowner, but it's also for the technician in your home that gives them a checklist to make sure that they are checking everything consistently at the same time, because it's very frustrating from a homeowner standpoint that you get one technician from a company, then you get another technician from that company, and they're not checking the same thing. They're not on the same page. And our standards provide a very nice checklist on what should be checked, how often it should be checked, and what to do in the event that you find something that's maybe outside that manufacturer's specification or causing the homeowner an issue on how to get that handled.
So I might be butchering this up, and you might have to get me back online. When you say a resource for them, are you referring to Standard 4? Or is it one of these documents I have up on my screen?
Yeah, Standard 4 for our quality maintenance.
There it is. Sorry, I had that up earlier.
Yeah.
This is the document, which is free, I might remind the audience, and we'll provide a link on the video information later so you can click it if you'd like to. But this is the document that Matt's talking about.
Yeah, that is absolutely free for the public. You can go there and print that off. If you have any listeners that just happen to be HVAC guys in the field, servicing customers, this is a great tool for them to use as well to deliver the expectation of the customers that have this and expect to have a proper service done.
So definitely a great starting point for the audience, especially when a lot of times folks don't have the benefit of having somebody like you to quarterback the situation as much as they'd like to have a mat on their shoulder to say, hey, no, this ain't right or this is right. This is if you're willing and you're listening to do the research, this is a great starting point. It's great information. It was well written, thought out, and provides think of it as like the skeletal structure, the minimum of what you should be seeing by a contractor coming out to that house. Moving forward a little bit, obviously there's some hot topics that come up in our industry, and I want to get ACCA's position and even approach, if they have one, to certain topics. And I'll keep it easy to start with. We get in the issue of duct cleaning or system cleaning. We get into this issue more specifically of cleaning versus replacement. Now, your Standard 6, which is the document that you're seeing here on the screen right now, is probably one of the most well-written documents. I can't imagine the amount of hours spent putting this together. being on my own committees and doing the same thing. And we haven't produced something this robust. How does this document, how can this document help a client figure out whether or not a cleaning method might be good or replacement might be an option? And let's focus on ductwork maybe to start with.
All right, we'll just start with the ductwork. So this document right here is for technicians and consumers to figure out, well, what is it we're dealing with? Are we dealing with flex duct? We're dealing with metal duct. So there's two procedures if you're going to replace those or clean those, because it's two different materials.
Sure.
But this document is definitely going to help people make a decision on, is this system so dirty that even if we attempt to clean it, is it going to be worth the time and money spent? And is it going to deliver the results, the expectation that has either been set by the technician or the expectation by the homeowner? Or this can take us into the option will probably be, because of certain circumstances, if you'd be better off putting in a new duct system, for example. But this document also focuses on source control. Because if you have a company, let's say hey, we're going to put in new ducts for you, but if they don't seal those ducts correctly, you can bet those ducts are going to become dirty really fast, because they're pulling in dirty, damp, unchecked air from various places that it's not supposed to be pulling air from.
No, even the example you used earlier offline about the bleach and people pouring it down the condensate line, long-term, even medium short-term problems of it reacting with the glue. And now you've got rid of one problem. You've actually replaced possibly with another, and even a compounding one where maybe now the condensate line is dripping at the intersections because someone poured something that they thought was the appropriate, call it a disinfectant or cleaning agent to take care of the problem. People don't understand these consequences. I think this document does a good job keeping them honest and not doing things they shouldn't be doing.
Right. And, and a pretty easy example for anybody listening is that if you ever had your system come on and you notice the doors start closing by themselves, turn the system on, the door slams closed.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be generally you have an imbalance in your duct system. Something could be leaking, or the system's starving for air, it's sucking air where it can, it even closes the door. So that's a clue for people listening that if you've noticed that, you might want to have someone come out and check and see if the ducts are sealed correctly, they're balanced, they're sized correctly, check the static pressure, because the folks that put the bleach down the drain line, which we don't recommend, but if your static pressure is so high, and that's really the blood pressure of the system, if the static pressure is so high, it could end up sucking the water and chemicals out of a drain line and putting it back into the system where it's coming downstream into the supplies.
Absolutely. And not to go totally, off our path, but, just hearing you talk about this stuff, it's a real challenging industry, because I think the HVAC system gets blamed for a lot of things that aren't necessarily fair or correct, to be more factually correct in the terminology. We have to be careful because there's a lot of moving parts, and Matt's just giving you a taste of little secondary things that you might be seeing that somebody, however, who's properly trained, has the background, has the training, the education that ACCA most definitely supports and that you can find using their resources, are less inclined to miss. They're more inclined to identify it and go, okay, well, this means something else. Let's take a look at that. So again, yet another reason. The other thing that I was impressed with about this particular standard, because I think it speaks to kind of that it takes a village effort to work with people. Sometimes one model doesn't fit for everybody, is the sentence I have highlighted here about, sometimes you need to bring in a third party. Maybe you could speak a little bit to why this sentence is here in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, that you get a technician out there. For example, let's say this guy's got 5 years experience under his belt. He knows what he can and can't navigate, and he goes to the customer's house and he pulls out the filter, or he's checking the evaporator coil, and he sees this black stuff growing inside the plenum. It's on the fiberglass or the metal. Now, he doesn't have, in this example, he doesn't have the certification or education to tell that customer with 100% confidence that's mold or that's X, Y, and Z. And this is why we mentioned having a third-party consultant come in, to someone who is qualified and trained to tell the customer, this is exactly what you have, and here are the options to remedy that. Because you have to know what you're working with. But a technician who's not qualified should not go in your home and say that's mold unless they're a certified air hygienist or they have the background to do that. That's why we reference a third-party consultant to come in for those issues that may be outside the technician's comfort zone, so to speak.
And very appropriate. I wouldn't say it was expected, but it's nice to see this because it just reminds the reader that, hey, listen, you're going to do a really good job within your parameters. But and that's the thing is, we deal with clients a lot of times where health is the reason we're working with them. Although I understand it's relative. I mean, I don't think people wake up one day and say, hey, let's just do a duct cleaning because we feel like it. Usually there's a reason and a motivation behind it. The level of people that we see and we work with are those 2%ers, those 5%ers. They're not the people that are usually complaining about a seasonal allergy. So I love the fact that this is there because I think it honors that limitation. We're probably going to refer back to the theme of bringing in a third party as we kind of go high level. And I certainly don't want to put you on the spot, meaning I'm not asking you to read word per word, but I want to walk the audience through this document because it's such a huge one and so important to today's interview. The document covers minimum qualifications. You can see that right there. We've highlighted. That's great. It's just a taste of who should be doing this type of work. A building survey. Hey, before we get too far, let's take a look and see if there's other underlying factors that might be an issue that need to be identified. And then eventually, you get into the visual assessment. High level, Matt, can you kind of just let our audience know what Section 3.3 is about, what it looks like?
Yeah, it's just the internal condition of the system for visual cleanliness. This is where they're checking in there to make sure that no insulation's wet, the insulation hasn't come off the side of the plenum or off the side of the door where the equipment butts up where the blower motor is. This will require them to get out an inspection camera to inspect those areas that cannot be seen easily from their vantage point. Meaning they will have to get out a camera to see what's behind that blower motor, or if you have a horizontal coil, what's on the other side of those coil, the inlet and the outlet side. It's really for them to take their time to visually look at what's going on inside the system, because it's more than just dirt and dust. You have humidity issues, and if the system's reaching dew point, then you're going to start having a rainforest inside that cabinet, and that's the last thing you want. So the visual cleanliness and the internal condition is there anything that could be causing this issue that we have not been able to diagnose looking at the exterior of the equipment or the duct system?
Right. To your point you made earlier, no point in fixing something or replacing something, I should say, if you haven't fixed the reason for the occurrence or the source in the first place.
Right.
They'll be doing it again. They'll be getting a call, and maybe the contractor will be happy, but the homeowner or the owner, the occupant won't be.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think most people are happy to see their HVAC people on a 2-time-a-year basis, but when you make it a visit every other day, every other week, people don't want to see contractors that much. They want to get it done right the first time and move on with their lives.
Understandable. Get into Section 3.4. Obviously, what I'm reading here is just a culmination of everything they've seen, because ultimately we're trying to figure out, do we need to clean or replace? Obviously, a scope of work can then be provided, which is a very normal part of the process. And then cleaning techniques, which I imagine is this part where the, in this case, the HVAC company or duct cleaning company is literally describing how they plan to attack that, whatever the problem is. When you get into the actual cleaning, so this is a big meat and potatoes part of this document, Section 4, you guys do a great job, again, in my opinion, talking about the importance of containment. Can you high-level walk folks through this section, kind of like, what are they doing first? What are they doing next? Just so the people here can get a better understanding.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Depending on what they're doing, if they're, it doesn't matter if they're doing a system replacement or duct cleaning or replacing the duct system, is that you don't want to start bringing in equipment or pulling material out that is contaminated and have it be brought all through the house.
Amen.
I've seen a lot of where guys have replaced ductwork that's gotten wet and they just drag it through someone's house. And
Yep.
instead of bagging it up in an industrial grade bag, making sure it's not going to go anywhere, that's what the containment is. They should be blocking off, the vents and registers when they're disconnecting stuff to keep it from falling down between the boots, for example. And when you kick the system backs on, it pulls all that stuff out there. If they're bringing the equipment into the house for some reason, that they need to have a monitor to be able to check that air, because if the air is dirtier when they're done, clearly you brought some containment in, and that needs to be addressed as well. So it's all about controlling that source of containment, so people don't have to have this repeated over and over again, or it doesn't solve their problem.
Well, and going back to that third-party consultant, for those of you that are listening, if you find that there's a lot of moving parts or there's other variables and you kind of want that quarterback there for you to guide you, this is when you would pick up the phone or get on Google or what and look for a local IEP in your area who can come out there and help you with the other concerns that you may very well have that are just not simply covered in this type of a document. That hence the whole "it takes a village." Okay, physical dislodgement. What does this mean?
The physical dislodgement is, I've seen it to where we've found clothes and other items that have been sucked into the system that may be blocking the airflow or what have you. Or
where'd the cat go? Okay.
The cat, or since I'm in Georgia, our favorite animal, the possum, gets up there and makes a nest inside the duct, and the customer's wondering, what does that smell? And we've done duct cleaning or taken ducts off, and we have physically removed animals and rodents that have died in the duct system that has been causing that odor. So that's what we're talking about, is physical dislodgement. Is actually physically removing something out of that airway and out of the system, so it's not there anymore.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised that is more common than my mind originally thought, but that's not what I thought when we were thinking physical dislodgement. So I'm glad I got the clarification. What about particle transport? Help the audience here.
Yeah, particle transport goes back to that source controls that we're trying to minimize. For example, let's say you have some duct, you're taking the duct out. We don't want and being drugged. Mrs. Jones's house. We want to keep that particles contained as much as possible in an industrial grade trash bag, tying it off, sealing it up, and then removing it out of the home. That way everything stays in that bag and does not contaminate the air and the building around it.
So really, it could be contaminated pieces, insulation of that matter. In my mind, I don't know if I'm getting too far ahead of myself in the standard, but I was thinking, how do you control the particles that you're kicking up during the actual cleaning of the ductwork? You're just talking about transporting contaminated materials properly from their original location to outdoors.
Right.
Okay, understood. Contaminant removal, physical removal of contaminants shall be the method for HVAC remediation. I like this comment because I think the point of it was to highlight that spraying to kill is not recommended. Is that a fair thing here, or can I word it differently?
Yeah, you can word it differently.
Okay. The use of any resurfacing products or antimicrobial approaches, i.e. sanitizers, ozone, or ultraviolet light as a substitute for particle removal and detailed cleaning shall not be used. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, it is. We don't want people, our standard doesn't want anybody going up there and put any sanitizers and stuff on there where it's not going to, where it's going to try to remove it is that, let's say you have a coil that's just completely caked in hair, dirt, dust, and grime. Sticking this stuff on there, it may not be the best option, where you actually have to replace that physical piece of, whatever it may be. The coil is very popular in the United States. It gets so dirty and has so much stuff on there.
Sure. Agreed. Okay. When you get into section 4.3, we talk about cleaning equipment. I think that's pretty straightforward. It's just the idea that makes sure that when an outfit comes into the home that they're having clean equipment, because this equipment is used on many homes. I doubt you're going to be the first client with the new equipment. And so this standard goes into detail. We won't get into it. I think it's self-explanatory, but just making sure the stuff is up to snuff, it's clean, new filters, that sort of thing. You don't want to use, in case you're not clear on this section to the audience, that is, dirty equipment, old filters from another home that could have had, contaminated. And I know we use that word loosely, but something that's not wanted. You don't want them to drag that from their home into yours. So this is just one extra way. Hey, pay attention. This does matter. So to the audience, if you see a contractor show up to your house and you can see dust just flying off of the equipment that they're about to roll into your home, that should be a red flag for you to hit the brakes and say, let's talk about this a little bit. Oh, and by the way, we have a standard right here that you can reference in case you get into some sort of a conversation where you need to say, this is the right way to do it.
Absolutely.
Building isolation. I know I didn't highlight it. I will now. What's that all about?
Oh, hang on. The screen froze up here a little bit.
Did it? Okay. We can still see you. Is it on 4.4 right now for you?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So basically what we're talking about building isolation is that if you're going to, whatever you're going to remove, for example, out of that building, is that you want to, let's say we're doing something in the basement of a house or building, wherever, that you want to just keep it isolated to that area to where you're not going to be cross-contaminating, let's say an area that you're not really working in, or
sure,
has not been planned to work in. So, and then it's also talking about using the Hepa filter to collect any fine particles that may not be caught by, a standard 1-inch filter you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's.
Right.
Yeah, because some of those cannot always
no
deliver the expectations.
Absolutely not, and agreed. So the whole point is you're trying to minimize your footprint. As a company coming into this building, you're going to focus on just your areas of concern. So if we're able to isolate other areas and otherwise clean the air and really provide that boundary or that barrier, if you will, that's all the more. That just increases your confidence level that you don't have to worry about cross-contamination that may come from other steps.
Right. We're just trying to keep the trauma to a minimum and not spread it everywhere. You just want a contractor that's going to come in that they're going to, lay down the red carpet. That way they're not going to attract mud and stuff into your home, but they're also going to take extra care of keeping the rest of your home clean when they're moving out the old equipment and bringing in the new equipment. And, I've had people buy, $15,000, $20,000 HVAC systems, but then they put this old ductwork back on it. And
see that a lot.
And it is so dirty within the matter of months, and it shouldn't have been that way.
No, understood completely. We won't dive into word for word for the next section 4.5, but can you maybe take a few minutes and kind of walk people through this next section? This is describing, certainly there's the pressure differentials, but it's also talking about how to clean different surfaces and the techniques. Is that what this is about? It's now you're diving into, we're going to vacuum surfaces uniformly. We're going to wipe things down. This is where they can find the actual steps. Is that fair to say here?
Yeah, that's fair to say. So I don't want to get too deep into that, but
I get it. You can be on the phone for 8 hours. I get it.
Absolutely. But this is where you want to identify, do you have metal ductwork? Do you have flexible ductwork? For example, I'm just kind of jumping down, but you see
Please.
Electric heating.
I do.
And electric reheating coils. Is that some of those are so bad that, you have to get those cleaned off as well. I know a lot of people that have electric heat that when they kick on the emergency heat, you get this burning smell. And
right.
I've had cat hair and stuff stuck to it, and it smells like cats in the house. And that's because the electric heat was not cleaned. But there is a process in this standard on how to clean various surfaces. And if the insulation's wet, can you get it dried out in 24 hours, or does it need to be replaced?
Got it. This document is so powerful because it gets into work sequence. It talks about even protecting clean surfaces of the ductwork. It acknowledges that, there's going to be pathways and methods that might cross-contaminate during the cleaning process, which you're trying to avoid. So a great document to remind certainly the company following it, but also the end user, the reader, okay, yeah, this is important. And it just gives you that much more, it empowers you with knowledge, which is a lot of what we do, so that people can be aware. They're going to have to be their own judge and jury when they're out there, because you don't have a mat that's going to be able to fly in when it's convenient for you to take a look at what's going on.
Right. Oh, but another thing to arm listeners with is that ask the contractor you hire, if you didn't find them off our website, Ask them what standard are they using when performing, duct cleaning or doing any type of maintenance on your HVAC equipment.
Absolutely. And I want to bring that up at the very end too. So thank you for saying that. Cleaning coils is always a touchy topic. High level, tell me what this document is having us do here so the reader understands.
Well, this is basically giving you guidance on like detergents and cleaners and pressurizing water that's not going to physically damage the coil itself. For example, if you go out there with a pressure washer and hit it to a coil real close, you're probably going to damage the fins on that. But this right here is telling you on best practices on how to do it. For example, it says pressurized chemical and water cleaning methods such as pressurized washers and chemical injection systems shall be utilized for coils with a depth of 4 rows or greater. So, it actually requires a contractor to figure out exactly how and the best method of getting it clean. Now, for personal preference, when customers go, hey, do you clean the coils? My definition of clean and your definition of clean may be completely different. Yep. And I've always kind of told people that we wash the coils because there's coils out there that are so dirty and contaminated that you're just not get them clean. And what the contractor has done is probably the best that can be done, just short of replacing that coil.
A quick question about cleaning coil in place versus physically removing the coil to clean it, which obviously involves a number of extra steps like pumping down the equipment, yada yada. Right. Is there a way to help the user of this document determine whether or not it's worth cleaning in place? I should say whether it's worth removing it or not to clean it?
Yeah, well, one thing I can tell if a contractor comes to you and says that I have to, what they call a pull and clean, usually in the industry is a pull and clean, the homeowner needs to go and look at it for themselves to see if, what they're saying is valid, because unfortunately there's a lot of people out there trying to make a quick buck and not always telling the truth. So responsibility on the homeowner to go look at that. If a contractor legitimately makes a reference or suggests that you pull and clean it, I would not do that. I would suggest that if you're going to have to pull it and clean it, put in a new coil. And the reason being is, from my experience, a lot of guys, they'll pull this coil out and they'll clean it, they'll put it back in, and usually it results in contamination inside the refrigerant system because they didn't pull a proper vacuum. And or they did not put a new filter dryer back on the system, which is, according to the manufacturer, every time the system is exposed to open atmosphere, a new filter dryer should be installed, and that usually never happens. And what you get is a bigger problem as if you were to put in a new evaporator coil and followed the installation protocol.
Well, at least the client's got to pay for that mistake. Oops. Well, I can see where you're coming from. So I know at the end of the day, it's still got to be based off of the professional judgment of the contractor that's actually making those decisions. But what your experience has been is very valid, because I don't know that most people would even have thought that. And that's important. It's like, if you're going to go that far, you need to look at other considerations. I mean, if it's a brand new coil, maybe that's different. If it's a coil that's on its last leg, it's working with an honest, reputable company, and a good place to start is ACCA, to see whether or not it is worth that call. I'm surprised and almost relieved to hear you not push pulling and cleaning as much as I thought it was. I was always under the impression that if you didn't do it, you almost got like the glasses down, look at you like with disappointment. But I understand with the challenges that you just mentioned versus the return on the investment, it doesn't seem to be worth it a majority of times.
No, we wrote it in our standard because that may be an option. It may be a new system. It could be a whole host of various scenarios. But just from my experience, when people have got the pull and clean, it has resulted in other issues, water leaks, refrigeration problems. And if you're going to go that far to pull and clean it, you can save so much more time by putting in a new coil.
This document does a great job going through the different components of the system. They talk about fan blades, motors. I love on the air handling unit in this section here, and I know it's mentioned elsewhere, but that even it's not just about having visible microbial growth on here, but even the insulation is wet. The document says, if it's that way, just remove it. There's so many unknowns and complications with what might have grown or be harboring in that sort of situation, wet or damaged otherwise insulation. By the time you get done talking about it, and this is my experience, by the time you get done sampling it and for the lack of peace of mind you get, it's worth replacing it. So excluding extreme situations, which again, it's a case-by-case scenario.
Yeah, I would just say for a technician standpoint, and I'm glad you brought up the insulation that's wet. I think FEMA had a guideline out there that if the insulation couldn't be drier than 24 hours, it had to be replaced. But technicians need to understand that you got to get down to why that system's wet. And if you have a system that's not ducted correctly, it's not sized correctly, and then you start getting into psychometrics where you start reaching dew point, you need to figure out why that is, because if you put new insulation in there and there's an underlying issue, guess what? That new insulation is going to get wet as well. And here we are back to square one.
Absolutely. Good point. I mean, again, high level, this document keeps on going. You can see there's a bunch of subsections on there, registers, diffusers, grills. It even gets into the ductwork system and describes different types of ductworks that you may very well have in your home and ways to look at it. I think these are really great points they make, very reasonable ways to determine and assess them. Gets into even going as far, section 4.10 of, hey, you have a hard to get area around your ductwork, find a service hole or an opening. I mean, the ACCA is not messing around. I've seen it happen to where a duct cleaning company goes in there and say, well, we can't reach it. And again, I know there's always exceptions, but you know, if you're going to do the job, I think is the takeaway here. Don't nickel and dime it, especially if it's main trunk lines, if it's large areas of duct. I know sometimes it is physically impossible to get to poor designed ductwork systems in homes, but I'm sure that a majority of cases, if there's a will, there's a way. And especially if this is a home that you're planning, you know, it's not just a house, right? It's a home. And if you wanted to create and maintain sanctuary, you need to put in the investment and the time to keep this, in this case, the lungs of your home as clean as you can.
Right, and there's several houses I know in Georgia where the ductwork elbows down and goes behind the wall.
Yeah, right.
You physically can't reach that unless you put a hole in the wall. Most people don't want to do that, but you need to make if you have the right tools, the right camera, different inspections, you can navigate those challenges on most of this equipment.
Matt, are some of those techniques and approaches covered in Standard 4?
For the maintenance, yes, we talk about you know, the tools you may need to pull out an inspection camera, and you need to check A, B, and C.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Well.
Okay, good. Just a good reference.
Yeah.
Section 5 is probably a little bit more at home with what I do, or at least used to do a lot more of, which is a site assessment. It talks about post-cleaning verification, and specifically the thing I'm talking about is Section 5.2.1, which is verification methods. And a couple things, I guess. There's different methods that are accepted in the industry, and this is the part where you correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. There's certainly a visual inspection. Does it seem to be dust-free? If there is conflict or debate of the efficacy of clean, you can even do a surface comparison test to see what does it look like after I just ran this vacuum through, that sort of thing. Is there a difference? And then you have the NADCA vacuum test, which is in another standard in the ACR 2013 standard. Here, is there a preference? Is there a norm? Like if it were you, Matt, I mean, what are a majority of people doing here in this industry? And what I mean by that is duct cleaning companies.
Yeah, that's a good question. From my experience, I can just speak to my experience that the two popular ones are the visual inspection and the surface comparison test. The vacuum test, that I've seen that go that way when people are conflicting with a contractor saying this was done, this wasn't done. It becomes a he said, she said.
Okay.
When we start getting that detailed.
Yeah.
But for most of the people doing a visual inspection, I used to take pictures before and after.
Yeah.
To show people. And I know there's certain customers that may not be able to go up into the air or down in the crawl space, but there's tools out there, inspection cameras that can take great pictures. Also, there's Bluetooth stuff where a customer can look at it live.
Yeah, there you go.
Because seeing is believing, right?
That's right. Picture's worth 1,000 words.
Exactly. So the visual inspection, the surface comparison is what I've seen. And, you know, pulling out an old piece of duct or a section of duct or dislodging something off the side of the duct and saying, well, this is what it was and this is what it is now.
Yeah.
And customers go, oh, I see the value in that. Because
yeah, sure.
To most homeowners, let's face it, to most homeowners, the air conditioning system is just the thing on the wall.
Right. Right,
Not much
right.
more to it.
Yeah, if they know where it's at, and I ran into that before. Just a quick note on the vacuum test. I think too the takeaway is a lot of times folks understandably have a expectation that ductworks need to be clean, like almost like an operating room or a clean room. Your ductwork is kind of like a carpet from my perspective. It's a reservoir, and inevitably it's going to build up with dust. It's not like you're eating off of it, and people have these different expectations of what would be normal in a ductwork, what was the baseline versus what did it look like afterwards, kind of that comparison that you're giving an example of earlier. This is yet another reason why, if you're somebody who has health concerns, chronic illness, or certainly like Matt said, and when there's a contingent, he said, she said thing, where you're bringing in a third party indoor environmental consultant who can come in there and do this type of testing for you to at least address the issue of performance, efficacy of clean, if you will, using a metric called the NADCA vacuum test, which is looking for like a weighted dust sample. Basically, it's looking for how much dust did they find in a given amount of cubic centimeters, that sort of thing, or square centimeters. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it's similar to like a blower door test to see how well those ducts were tightened and sealed.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, you can always take it. It's outside the scope of this document, but when the clients we work with, you kind of get into issues where, well, is it contaminated with mold? That's really beyond the scope of many of these documents. You need to bring in an IEP, an indoor environmental professional, or somebody who can kind of be there at that process, maybe kill two birds with one stone, taking a look at both general cleaning performance and those other concerns. The one thing I thought I almost skipped over it earlier when I was looking through all this, but I love that Section 6 kind of brings to mind resurfacing products, mastic or closure products, and things to consider. The document does a great job of saying user beware when it comes to using stuff that might cover a surface inside or outside of the ductwork system. So I'm trying to keep it high level because I know we can dive into that one deep, but this is a great section to read. Really thought you guys did a great job on 6.3, just talking about different sanitizers, disinfectants, and other antimicrobial products. I think ACCA's position is fair. They're going to recommend making sure that it is registered and used as it is registered and intended to be used. I think for that, maybe the 5%ers that are out there, some of those folks that are listening are maybe chemically sensitive. This just, again, I told you I was going to reference this thing multiple times, is why you need to have an independent third party come out there like an IEP. And this would be appropriate to do maybe in the planning stages. So you want to have your ducts cleaned, or you're thinking about it. You've even found maybe a company to use on ACCA's website, their little search engine tool that they have. But now you want to have somebody kind of there during the bid and the estimating process to take a look at the cleaning process from A to Z. I highly recommend during those situations that you work with a third party, because those sorts of things and exposures are not going to really be covered by this document, nor could it. There are so many moving parts, so many different variables. Everyone's different. Everyone has different sorts of exposures. So for those of you listening, this document is, there's more here that we're going to talk about, but it's so full with good information and things to consider and doing the cleaning the right way. But there's still little bits of things that you might want to have an IEP help you with. And I think I would just have you start with reaching out to that IEP and saying, can you take a look at this estimate from this company and what they're planning on doing, and tell me if we need to modify it or if it looks good. The appendix section, I'm not going to go through it like we did the main body. I just want to give you some credit, some highlights here, is that it really goes down into more detail. Now, this is not part of the standard. This is just additional information for the readers learning and all that. Take a look at it. It gets into, dives into deeper issues about and considerations when you're cleaning the ductwork or assessing it. Section, I think it was B. I was asking about the tools earlier. I forgot that I found it in Standard 6. Kind of expectations of what maybe you would think a company would show up to your home with to do their job. The one thing I want to do real quick as we're kind of winding down is I wanted to bring up something. There are other standards out there in our industry, we, for example, the IICR CS520 is a mold remediation standard. They have a section in there, section 13, that talks about the HVAC system. And they mention NADCA. You guys mentioned NADCA. Can you give our audience just a brief overview of two parts here, the difference between ACCA and NADCA, like who's who, what's what, and then the transition into why would somebody use maybe the Standard 6, which is a fabulous document to use regardless, versus the ACR 2013?
Sure, no problem. Well, ACCA, ACCA is the trade organization that we kind of have an umbrella. We have a wide range of different stuff that we better the industry with sizing equipment, doing duct design, psychometrics, just stuff like that. So we're for the contractor that's out there doing those replacements, the services, the maintenance, everything like that. And we develop the best practices to hope contractors will use. And we base that, then we take it a step further. When we get into that more advanced stuff, we'll jump over to NADCA, which they focus on specifically for contractors that are in the duct cleaning business. So when ACCA contractor says, whoa, this might be a little extra, this is where they want to refer to the NADCA standard on getting an issue resolved for a client. So NADCA is specifically focused for duct cleaning contractors. ACCA is focused on your general HVAC contractor that fall under the umbrella of various tasks that we have to do on a daily basis, to keep the service department and the install department running.
Well, and in terms of supply, there are a lot of contractors that are probably going to be more associated with ACCA, which are also offering these duct cleaning services. I know duct cleaning only service companies exist, but by the numbers, I'm imagining there's way more HVAC contractors that are going to be identified through ACCA and are following these best practices, at least the ones that are registered and doing what they need to be doing through you guys. And that what I'm hearing you say is that if they run into a situation where maybe a client wants a little bit more detail, because that's what I heard from you offline earlier, is that's because when I look at Standard 6, I'm like, this is pretty darn detailed. I don't know if you're not giving yourself enough credit, but I think it looks pretty damn good. ACR, what I heard you say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is it just gives you a bit more detail. It gives you maybe some more scenarios that you might run into. Is that fair in your opinion?
It is fair. And I would, like I told you earlier before we started everything, that I kind of look at ACCA for the most part to help listeners gather this, is that, we got some really good secret sauce. It's almost you go to your doctor for a routine checkup. They know a bunch of information, but when it's time to move over to that specialist that may require some extra TLC, that's where we start referencing organizations like NADCA to help us supplement our information and deliver a good quality product to our members and to the clients.
So you guys are working together. It's not like you guys are competitors, if I could just say it that way.
That's correct. We we work with several other organizations. NADCA, for this example, happens to be a really good highlight. But yes, we set the egos off to the side, and we want to do what's best for the industry.
Which is, again, why I wanted you guys on the show, is because you guys demonstrate that through the content you provide, let alone what I've seen today, and I appreciate that. I know that you reminded the audience there, and I will list links to Standard 4, which is this document right here. We'll also get a link to Standard 6. We'll also put on the video cast a link to that Finding a Contractor. I think that's a great, useful tool. Are there any other parting thoughts, words of wisdoms, friendly reminders that you'd like to share with our audience before we end today?
Yeah, absolutely. Another resource that contractors should be following when it comes to, let's say we're going to have to replace ducts, or you have a system performance issue, is our ACCA Manual D. And that's our standard right there on the screen for telling contractors the proper way to size ducts, get them installed, different layouts. That's a fantastic resource for contractors. Also really good reading material for any homeowners that are looking to have that done, or they've had that recommended to be done in their home.
Right.
Another final thought I'd like to suggest is that when you hire a contractor, take time, sit down with them, address all the concerns. The idea behind our standards is to help reduce frequency of breakdown of systems, whether you're doing the cleaning or the repair. We also want to increase the useful product life of the system. So if these standards are executed by contractors, you get longevity out of your system. And if you put the right IAQ products, which is indoor air quality products, inside your system, you can start breathing cleaner, fresher. We've written for the industry to help everybody, live that standard.
And I know on the audio you were breaking up just a bit, but just to reiterate, because I think it was a solid point, is it's not just about the cleaning. It's about the normal operation, the design, the functionality of the equipment, because fine, clean your ductwork, fine if you have to replace it. But if the bones and the skeleton of the system aren't operating correctly, if you don't have somebody who's got the credentials to even come into your home and your situation and diagnose it, assess it, chances are it's going to be just kind of a boomerang effect where it's just going to come back. You're going to have other issues or similar issues. Matt's been kind enough today to even give us a few examples of just when you thought removing a coil, for example, was a good thing to do, it may not. Consider a couple things. And I think that there's a lot of takeaways from today, but I think a big one is the importance of hiring people with knowledge and experience. And I think ACCA, what originally attracted me to them is just kind of they set the bar so high. Nowadays, it seems like if you can find somebody with even the least bit of integrity, character, putting the client's needs first. Oh my God, did I say that out loud? Putting the client's needs first. It is such an attractive thing. And I think ACCA honors that. And they are a friend. They are a resource. So if you are in need of your system to be checked, possibly clean, maybe replaced, start here. Start with ACCA. Look at the resources that we've talked about today. Take a look, go online, read more about them. They are a great company. Matt, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The content of this show is for informational purposes and represents the sole opinion of the host and its interviewees only. Any reliance on the information provided in this show is done at your own risk. Additional opinions and/or research may change our current view of the topics spoken in this show. We do our best to minimize any inaccuracies presented and make legitimate efforts to back all comments with our own field experience, independent literature, or studies that support the topics discussed. This information should not be used to make conclusive decisions regarding your health or exposure. Ultimately, all questions and/or concerns regarding your health should be addressed by a qualified physician. Additional exposure concerns and/or questions pertaining to the health of your home or building should be addressed by qualified and on-site professionals. Any and all products and services discussed in this show should not be construed as a recommendation, endorsement, or guarantee that their use is appropriate for your situation. In short, we hope this information is of value to you, but please do not act upon it without actual and individual consultation and guidance by professionals who have taken the time and appropriate collection of data to assess your unique situation.